Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Jay and welcome to the Shiplife. So in some breaking news, we now have a major update regarding the NCL Breakaway and its current COVID outbreak that it's been dealing with for the past couple days. What was originally stated to be just 10 cases increased to 17 cases, and now at the time of this recording has increased to 20 cases. The 3 additional cases all currently being crew members that are on board the NCL Breakaway right now. So you have people that are getting more worried, wondering how many people are really infected on board the NCL Breakaway. Of course, people are also asking the big question, is NCL lying about how many people are actually infected? Because originally they stated it was just a handful. We know now it's too early to tell about any of this. There's also the big worry about the Omicron variant. There's supposed to be one on board. People are wondering how many of that is actually on board the ship. And then on this second sailing, because this outbreak initially happened on the sailing that took place between November 28th and then the 5th of December, but now they're on another sailing currently headed to Roatan. Actually, I believe they arrived there now. But of course, there were guests, hundreds in fact, which I'll talk about in a minute, that refused to even get on this second sailing. Now, before we go over the details, just full transparency, a lot of these details were provided by Cruise Law News, but of course, I do have friends on all NCL ships, or most of them anyway, and I did contact them last night to kind of get a little bit of detail, see what was going on, and confirm all of this. It is true, there are more cases on board. So real quick, before we go into the update, I do want to give a very brief recap of everything that's happened for those that haven't been following along, or those that forgot what the actual timeline is. So back on November 28th, the NCL Breakaway sailed out of New Orleans, calling on 3 ports, which was Belize, Honduras, and Mexico. Now, at the time, everything appeared to be fine. The ship was set back to arrive in New Orleans on the 5th, just 1 week later. However, on the 4th, they decided to test everybody on board the NCL Breakaway. Come to find out, there were 10 cases of COVID on board. Now, once the ship arrived back on the 5th over to New Orleans, the Louisiana Department of Health stepped in and tested everybody once again. Come to find out, there were 7 additional cases, bringing the total to 17, with the possibility of one Omicron variant being on board, being one of the crew members from South Africa. However, even after that fact, they tested everybody once again, and everybody that tested negative was sent home with a take-home test that, at least to my knowledge, was instructed to take within 3 days. So, of course, there was a lot of media attention on this, but overall, things seemed to kind of end there, or so we thought. Now, on this past Sunday, after the dust kind of cleared with all the media attention and the initial outbreak, there was still another sailing that was set to take place on the NCL Breakaway. There was no delays or anything like that. However, around 8 a.m., whenever the NCL Breakaway started to board new passengers, apparently there were a lot of people that decided, well, 400 in fact, that decided they didn't want to sail because of all the chaotic mess that was going on with the NCL Breakaway and all the media hysteria, which is understandable to a certain degree. I know some people are worried, and again, understandable. However, you have NCL, of course, they decided to issue full refunds for everybody in case you were wondering, and the ship ended up sailing out on time. So once it did that, the ship was headed to Roatan yesterday. Come to find out, there are 3 crew members that tested positive, and now we end up where we are now, which of course is bringing more questions than we have answers, and is understandably causing a lot of worry. So going back to the big question that was being asked at the beginning of the video is how many people are actually infected with COVID due to this outbreak that took place on the NCL Breakaway? Well, it's kind of hard to tell. And what makes things just a little more complicated is the fact that NCL sent the people that tested negative home, due to the fact that, yes, they did get a take-home test that they were supposed to take within 3 days. But you got to remember the incubation period, meaning somebody could contract COVID or even symptoms anywhere between 2 and 14 days or 2 weeks. So you can see where the worry is. So you have media outcry, people saying that, well, you sent everybody home, all spread across the United States, and if they come out to be positive 2 weeks from now, or at this point 10 days from now, there's going to be a bigger issue. Potentially that is. There's also the claim that everybody's asymptomatic. It's kind of hard to tell because, again, it has not been 2 weeks. So you do got to wonder what could have been the alternative, because naturally, yes, in some sense this does look bad for NCL. They couldn't hold everybody against their will. Well, they could have just put everybody in a hotel. But if you really think about that, would that have been a great alternative for, the public eye, and everybody else would start wondering? It would just potentially cause more problems and do more harm than good. But there's also the worry about the ports of call that was visited between the dates of the 28th of November and December 5th. Could these people that were maybe positive on board infect people that were in Belize, Honduras, and Mexico? That is a big and understandable question that you got to take into consideration. Now, while the big worry is, of course, how many people are really infected, I do believe that it could potentially increase. And I said this at the beginning when it was just 17, because first of all, 17 is literally an odd number. Even though it's increased to 20 now, you still got to wonder if there is going to be more. But unfortunately, we won't know until, at the very minimum, about 10 days or so from now. But another worry that people are putting out there is, of course, the apparently one Omicron variant case that's being dealt with on board. Apparently, there's a crew member from South Africa that's being isolated that is believed to have the Omicron variant. All that together, to me, though, just being honest and just being, talking about this objectively is a little strange. How do they know that? Did they test this crew member for the Omicron variant? If so, well, maybe they should go about it a certain way. But just before any of that, just looking back, if you look at how everything works, I talked about this in my last video regarding this whole outbreak situation. Whenever a crew member actually boards a ship, prior to that, they do have to do a testing, multiple tests that is, for the most part, and a week to 2 week quarantine in their home country before even coming to the city where their ship is home ported at, right? So that's a week to 2 weeks, or let's just be generous here, right? Because before I do the math, there's a week of quarantining in their home port or their home country. Then they fly over to where the ship is. There's a week of quarantine in the hotel, followed up by another week of quarantine on the ship before they are allowed to be in the general vicinity or a public area regarding the crew or the guests or just everybody as a whole. But there's the worry that NCL didn't follow protocols and have this man self-isolate for typically, at least from my knowledge, it's anywhere from 10 days to up to 2 weeks or 14 days. But let's just go back and do the math here. And let's say this crew member joined whenever the ship left prior to this outbreak on the 28th. If you go back a week, let's say quarantine for a week, that'll leave you at where? The 21st of November. You go back another week, let's say he's in South Africa, that leaves you the 14th of November. So you're saying that this man could have potentially been the first Omicron case out there, which is going to be a big deal because I believe the first case anyway, in South Africa was initially reported on the 22nd. So it is kind of curious. And you're also saying at that point, everything regarding the possibility, just even entertaining the idea that maybe he could have got it from a passenger because the NCL crew are not allowed off the ship is completely wiped away. They're not even going to look at that. I think that's a little strange and a little, just a little weird. I'm not going to dive into that. Maybe I'm just putting on my tinfoil hat here, but I believe all scenarios should be looked at to some degree. So we also have, I guess, the creator of Cruise Law News, Jim Walker. He's coming out and speaking somewhat against NCL and saying how they originally stated that it was just a handful of cases, which would be about five people maybe. And I guess maybe it being generous, somebody has like an extra finger or something like that. Let's just say 6 people being generous, right? I guess you could put in the idea that maybe NCL knew there was more, but you got to kind of tread softly when it comes to the media because we see how they can just run with it. So whether they knew if there was more or not, it's kind of hard to say at this point in time. But you just got to take in all the facts that when it comes to things being done publicly, you got to handle it a certain way. But I do also believe that transparency should always come first above all. That way a situation can be handled. Otherwise, we'll be dealing with this mess for a very long time. Well, we've been dealing with it 2 years, going on 3 years now. So you see my point. But also there is the issue with the Omicron variant. The claim is that if somebody has the Omicron variant on board, why were they not taken off the ship if that's the issue? And I do believe that's a valid point because a lot of people are worried about, the vents, the air ducts. Could this person with the Omicron variant potentially spread the Omicron variant around the ship because, things are going through the air vents? Now, I don't know what type of system or filter that NCL is using. I remember all the ships, or particularly the Royal Caribbean ships, were doing major updates to their AC filters and, just how things were spreading on board the ship. But I guess it's hard to tell. Now, just to wrap all this up, when it comes to NCL, did they make the right decision? That's the question everybody's going to ask. If they do enough, that's what's going to be the main thing that's going to be talked about. Now, it is hard to tell at this point in time because it is a very big deal. And unfortunately, it's kind of hard to see where the right direction is because regardless of what you do, if things go bad or kind of bad and they just don't go perfect, everybody's going to be pointing the finger at NCL and be like, well, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? I'm not saying NCL is wrong. I'm not saying NCL is right. It's just a very curious situation right now. But anyway, guys, I try to look at all of this objectively. I'm going to leave it right here. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Tomorrow, I am going to be talking about the NCL Dawn. The NCL Dawn is parked literally like not even a mile from me. And there's a lot of talk right now and a lot of hysteria going on with that as well. I'm going to go down there later on, and I have a video for you tomorrow. Let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it so more people can see it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see all of you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.